Hey guys, tonight, we're slipping back into the uneven cobblestones and flickering candlelight of the medieval world. A place where every rustling skirt and whispered prayer carried more weight than we can imagine now. The question we're unraveling: what age did girls marry in medieval times? And more than that, what did it feel like to be one of them? To go from childhood giggles to wedding veils, all before your voice had even stopped changing. Picture this: you're 11, maybe 12. You're barefoot in a field, racing the shadows with grass stains on your knees. But in the next season, just as the apples ripen or the frost creeps in, you might be cloaked in silk, kissed on the forehead by a man twice your age, and led by the hand into a new home you didn't choose. Why? Because in your world, marriage isn't about love. It's about land legacy and your father's ledger. And the truth, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're awake before the sky turns gray. The fire in the hearth has gone out, and your fingers are stiff from the cold. A rooster calls somewhere in the distance, but you already know what day it is. Your nursemaid told you 3 times before bed. The cook reminded you with extra sweetness in your morning porridge yesterday. Even your father kissed the top of your head, not something he often does, and told you to sleep well. You won't sleep well again for a long time. You sit up slowly. Your body is sore not from labor, but from nerves. You're 12, maybe 13, no older. You've bled once, maybe twice, and suddenly that means everything is different. You've crossed an invisible threshold. You're eligible now. In medieval England or France or the Germanic kingdoms or anywhere with a feudal lord and a tax collector, your age doesn't matter as much as your usefulness. And a girl's usefulness begins with her womb. No one asks if you feel ready to marry. They ask only if your hips have widened and your chest has changed. Signs, markers, like flags on a map. You rise and let the maid help you into your best dress. It's not white, of course. That custom won't come for hundreds of years. Its wool or linen may be dyed a soft blue. You don't wear it often, it's scratchy, but today it's meant to show that you're respectable and that your family has done their part. Your mother won't look you in the eye. She's fussing with your veil, tying and untying the same ribbon 3 times. Her hands are shaking. She knows what this day means better than you do. She was your age once, maybe younger. Downstairs, you hear the bustle. The priest is already here. Your betrothed arrived with his party just after dawn. He's older, 18, perhaps 22 if he's from a well-off family. Or maybe he's 30 if the match is strategic. You've seen him once before. He said you had a modest manner, and your father seemed pleased. No one asked what you thought. You step into the hall and see garlands of herbs above the doorways. Sage for wisdom, rue for protection. Your grandmother insisted on it, whispering the old superstitions that still linger in peasant homes and noble manners alike. Because today, you're not just becoming a wife. You're stepping into a lifetime contract, one that can't be escaped without scandal or blood. The priest begins to speak. You repeat the Latin words you've practiced. You don't understand all of them, but you know they bind you. Bind you to this man, this family, this life. A ring is placed on your finger. You try not to tremble. When he kisses your cheek, you flinch just slightly. No one notices, or if they do, they pretend not to. After the vows, there's food, boar bread wine if your family can afford it. You sit beside your husband. People call him that now. Your husband. The word feels strange in your mouth. He laughs too loud. He smells of leather and cloves. He doesn't touch you during the meal, but his glances are heavy, measured, as if he's inspecting what he's just acquired. Later, someone carries you away to the bridal chamber. There are whispers, jokes. Old women cluck their tongues and offer advice with sharp smiles. You don't cry. Not yet. You're too numb. The room is warm, lit by candles. There's a feather bed, a basin of water, a bowl of lavender. Someone thought to be kind. And then the door closes. What happens next depends on many things. On his patience, on your terror, on the unspoken rules that hang heavier than the tapestries on the wall. There may be pain, there may be silence, but most of all there will be expectation, because you are now a married woman, at 12 or 13, and no one will ever call you a girl again. You lie awake long after the candles burn low, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. You think of your old room, of your sister's laugh, of the doll you forgot to pack. And in the quiet, something inside you begins to shift, not break, not yet, but shift. You've crossed over, and there's no path back. The morning sun leaks through the wooden shutters, casting pale streaks across the bedding you barely slept in. The linens are rumpled, your limbs are sore, and your thoughts feel older than your years. You've stepped into a new world now, not through choice, but through duty. And while the house looks the same stone walls, the same creaking beams, you are not the same. There is no instruction manual for being a wife at 13, no guide passed from one girl to the next. There are only expectations, and they arrive without kindness. You are to rise early, keep your hair neat, tend to household tasks, speak softly, bear children, and make no trouble. If you are noble, perhaps you are expected to oversee the kitchen staff or manage the household accounts. If you are a peasant, the work is physical, feeding animals, fetching water, grinding grain. Either way, the weight of the role is the same. You move through the manor slowly that morning. Every servant, every neighbor, every cousin who watched the wedding now sees you with different eyes. They call you lady, even if your hands are still small, even if your voice still trembles. And you feel it, that invisible shift, no longer a girl, not truly a woman. Something in between. Something expected to grow up overnight. And they don't just expect you to grow. They expect you to endure. Marriage, after all, was not a romantic ideal in the Middle Ages. It was a transaction, a consolidation of property, a tightening of alliances. Your value wasn't measured by your dreams or laughter. It was measured by your dowry, by your fertility, by how well you performed your part in the endless chain of inheritance and obedience. You sit near the hearth and try to warm your fingers. They still shake. The older women offer you warm milk and pretend not to notice. But they do notice. They always notice. Because they were once you, married young, expected to keep quiet, trained in the same unspoken lessons: how to speak without challenging, how to serve without complaint, how to disappear without truly vanishing. In some parts of medieval Europe, canon law said girls could legally marry at 12 and boys at 14. But legal and appropriate were different things. Wealthy families often betrothed children even younger, 7, sometimes 6, just to secure titles or lands. The actual marriage might be delayed until puberty, but once a girl reached that milestone, she was considered of age. And from that point on, the countdown began. Your own betrothal happened quickly. A letter, a visit, a dowry discussion between men over salted meat and ale. You were told only afterward, handed a piece of embroidery to finish, while your mother explained in gentle tones what would soon happen. "You're lucky," she said. "He's from a good family. He's not so old." You didn't feel lucky, but you smiled anyway. Now, on your second day of marriage, you sit quietly while your new husband speaks with a steward about the spring planting. You listen not because you're expected to contribute, but because you must learn everything. What crops matter, how much firewood is stored, which tenant families are late with their rents. Knowledge is armor, and though no one will hand it to you, you can gather it in silence, piece by piece. Later, he takes you for a walk through the village, not as a courtesy, but as display. Let them see his bride. Let them know the match has been made. You feel their eyes follow you, some with curiosity, others with quiet judgment. One older woman nods and mutters a prayer as you pass. Another just shakes her head and turns away. Children peer at you from behind doors. Girls your age watch you with expressions that blend awe and fear. You wonder if they know what marriage truly means. You wonder if you even do. That evening, you're told to rest early. You lie in bed and stare at the ceiling beams. You remember how you used to count stars through your old window. You used to wish on them. What did you wish for? Not this. Not this silent house. Not this sudden womanhood. Not this role that fits like a dress you'll never grow into but are still expected to wear. You hear voices outside your door, servants likely. You strain to hear your name, but they speak in half sentences. You wonder how they talk about you now. She's just a girl. She'll learn. At least he's not cruel. And then you realize something chilling. Their bar is not love or kindness or joy. Their bar is survival. If your husband isn't cruel, that's enough. If he feeds you and leaves no bruises, that's a good marriage. No one talks of happiness. That isn't the goal. Not for you. But even now, you refuse to let go entirely of yourself. You pull your blanket close, not for warmth, but for comfort. You press your fingertips to your lips and remember the kiss your sister gave you before you left home. She didn't say goodbye. She said, "Write me. And maybe you will. Maybe you'll find scraps of parchment in this house, ink and time. Maybe you'll write your sister a letter not of complaint, but of truth, about what this life is, what it isn't, what you're trying to hold on to. Because you are trying, even now, and that matters. The morning is damp and gray, the sky sagging under low-hanging clouds. You awaken not to birdsong or light, but to the scrape of a wooden door and the soft creak of your husband dressing beside you. His presence no longer startles you, but it still doesn't feel familiar. You lie still and listen. He yawns, stretches, mutters something about oats, then leaves without a word. The door clicks shut, and the silence becomes your own again. You sit up slowly, adjusting the linen shift twisted around your legs. Your muscles are still learning this life. Your body is still healing from what it has been asked to endure. You're not sure if it will ever feel normal, but you rise anyway. That's what you do now, rise anyway. In the corner of the room, folded garments wait. You dress yourself today. No nursemaid, no mother, no soft encouragement. Only expectation. The dress is plain wool, the laces loose enough to pull alone. You manage without tears, without fumbling. That you decide is a kind of victory. Downstairs, the household is already moving. The servants bustle around the hearth. The steward is bent over parchments at the long table. No one greets you with affection, but they nod, polite, cool, and watchful. You are not yet one of them. You are not yet anything. just the wife. Just the girl who was given away like a coin, who now must prove she belongs in a house that never once asked her what she wanted. You join the cook in the kitchen hoping for something to do. She's busy kneading dough, her elbows dusted with flour. She offers you a blunt nod and gestures toward a bowl of dried beans. "Shell these," her silence says. You sit on the stool, fingers working, and listen. She speaks after a while. Not kindly, but not cruelly either. "How old are you?" she asks. 13, you say. She snorts. "Still got milk teeth." You don't know what to say to that, so you say nothing. She adds, "You'll be fine if you stay quiet, do what's needed. He's not the worst." And that is meant to be reassuring. Because in the medieval world, no one protects you from early marriage. The laws do not. The church does not. The customs certainly do not. If anything, they encourage it. Because girls are considered fertile early, and their marriages are useful early. An alliance made at 13 means children by 15, heirs by 17, and power solidified long before your youth has even run its course. And if you're peasant-born, it's worse in other ways. There may be no priest, no ceremony, just a quiet understanding that once a man claims you and your family doesn't protest you are his. Common law marriage, they call it. Recognized, accepted, permanent. Girls in villages are wed even younger sometimes. At 12, they're given to field hands or tanners twice their age. Not for love, for land, for labor, for livestock. You think about that as you shell beans. You think about a girl named Elise who lived 2 cottages down from your family. You heard once she was promised to a miller when she was 9. She used to play with dolls and pretend to marry princes. She had a gap in her front teeth and always wore a crooked braid. You wonder where she is now. Married, most likely. Maybe pregnant. Maybe dead. You blink hard and keep working. By afternoon, your husband asks you to walk with him. His tone is clipped formal. He still doesn't quite know what to do with you. You are both actors cast in a play you didn't write, and neither of you seems sure of your lines. You walk beside him down a muddy path that curves toward the orchard. He asks you questions about your education. Can you read a little? Can you sew? Of course, do you sing sometimes? He nods, thoughtful. You'll manage, he says. It's the closest thing to a compliment he's ever given you. That night you find a scrap of paper tucked inside a book of Psalms on the shelf. The ink is faded, the writing uneven. A girl's hand, maybe. The words are brief, "This house is cold, but I am colder. I pretend better each day." You fold the scrap and slip it into your sleeve. Because someone else lived this life before you. Someone else endured this same quiet, these same ceilings, this same strange ache. And now you have her words. Proof that you are not the first, and maybe not the last. That night, as you lie in bed again, back turned to your husband, eyes fixed on the fireless hearth, you whisper the words to yourself like a prayer. I pretend better each day, but deep down you are not pretending. You are learning, watching, adapting, quietly gathering the strength it will take not just to survive this life, but to shape it. Bit by bit, thread by thread. Because even at 13, even given away like a bargaining chip, you are still a soul with a spine. And no marriage, no matter how early, can fully silence that. A week passes, maybe more. The days blur into each other like smudged ink on parchment. You've started marking them with small things, the number of doves that perch on the stable roof, the times the maid forgets to sweep beneath your chair, the color of the sky when the kitchen fires first spark to life. It's a quiet way of surviving, taking inventory of the little things, because the big things are too heavy to carry all at once. You learn how the household works, not through instruction, but by watching. Who answers to whom? Who forgets to shut the pantry? Who sneaks honey from the storeroom when they think no one is looking? You begin to understand the rhythm of the manor. You can sense when the steward is nervous, when the livestock is due for sale, when your husband is in a mood that makes you vanish down the long hallway and pretend to read. You find the library 2 days after your wedding, tucked behind a warped wooden door. It smells like dust and dried rosemary, and the books are stiff with age. Most are in Latin beyond your reach, but some are in French or English. You don't read well, but you try. You trace the letters with your finger, mouthing the words, shaping them like spells. One book is a bestiary, a guide to animals both real and imagined. You linger on the page with a phoenix wings ablaze, rising from its ashes. The caption is faded, but you understand the idea. A creature destroyed by fire only to rise again. You close the book slowly. You wonder if that's possible for people too. Your husband still regards you with caution, as though waiting for you to either blossom or break. He rarely raises his voice. He doesn't strike you, in this world that qualifies as luck. But there's no gentleness either. Just routine. Just a sense that your presence is another task on a list marriage heir estate. At meals, he speaks with the steward about taxes and livestock. You eat in silence, your spoon tapping the edge of your bowl as you drift through memories. Your younger sister had a laugh like a bubbling stream. She used to sneak apples and blame the dog. You miss her the way you miss sunlight, quietly, constantly. When the meal ends, you excuse yourself. He doesn't ask where you go. Sometimes you visit the chapel not to pray, but to sit. The flickering candles calm your thoughts. You pretend you're somewhere else in a version of life where you're allowed to grow slowly, to make mistakes, to love someone after you've come to know them. You trace your name into the wax of a candle stub. No one will see it. But it's something. A mark. You begin to understand that girls married young, not because it was ideal, but because it was convenient. Noble families saw early marriage as a strategic move. A girl married at 12 or 13 could begin producing children soon after extending bloodlines, sealing alliances. Peasant families often saw it as necessity. One less mouth to feed. One more connection to stability. Love was never part of the equation. You remember a story once told by your old nursemaid, a tale of a girl who refused her arranged marriage. She ran into the forest, lived with a healer woman, brewed potions, and danced under the moon. The villagers called her cursed. But in the story, she was happy, free. You used to believe that girl was real. Now you know better. Now you understand that resistance for most was not an option. Girls who refused their matches were often punished, shunned, or forced into convents. Some were married off in secret, their consent scribbled by others. Some didn't even live long enough to question the path laid before them. But you also know this girl's found ways to endure. One of the older maids, Agnes, begins to warm to you. She brings you a warm brick for your feet, at night slips you sweetened bread from the kitchen. She never asks questions, but one evening she says, "You remind me of my sister." You ask what happened to her. Agnes stirs the stew and says, "Married young. Didn't speak for 2 years. Then one day she sang, like nothing had ever happened." You ask if she was happy. Agnes doesn't answer. She just hands you a ladle and says, "Stir clockwise, not widdershins." Or it curdles. You follow the motion. Clockwise. Always clockwise. That night you write your first letter. It's to your sister. You don't know if it will ever reach her. You don't know if anyone will carry it. But you write anyway. You tell her about the doves, the bestiary, the stew. You don't mention the wedding night, or the ache in your ribs when you laugh because it feels too strange now. You end the letter with, "I'm still here. I'm still me. Just quieter now." You fold it neatly and hide it beneath your mattress. In the darkness, you hold your breath and listen to the creaks and sighs of the old house. It doesn't feel like home. Not yet. Maybe never. But for now, it shelters your breath, your letters, your small, steady remembering of who you were before this. And even if no one else sees it, you do. And that's where it begins. You wake to the sound of hooves clattering on the road beyond the manor gate. Visitors. A rare thing. The household is already abuzz, maids rushing with linens, the steward barking about bread and fresh rushes for the hall. You're told nothing at first. No one thinks to inform the young bride of household matters. Not yet. You're still more ornament than authority. But you watch and you listen. By mid-morning, the guests arrive. A cousin of your husband's, perhaps. Or a noble family seeking favor. Their horses are sleek, their cloaks bright with embroidery. One woman catches your eye, tall, poised, maybe 17, her hair in a golden braid wound with pearls. She walks like she belongs to the space around her. When she smiles at you, it's polite, distant, unreadable. She was married young too, you can tell. She has the same stillness, the same practiced grace. But there's something else, a confidence you don't yet have. You wonder how long it took her to learn that look. You wonder what she hides behind it. At the feast that evening, you sit quietly beside your husband. He pours your wine. He offers you bread. To others, you must look like the perfect pair, young wife, attentive lord. But it's a play, a soft illusion. You barely speak. The other lady watches you. Once she leans in and says, "Your sleeves are a bit long for your arms. You should take them in. It makes you look smaller." You murmur a thank you, though you aren't sure whether it's a kindness or a cut. In truth, she reminds you of what you might become. What you may have to become. Composed. Self-contained. Trained in the art of smiling without revealing anything beneath it. After the meal, you slip away. You take refuge in the herb garden, its soil still damp from yesterday's rain. You kneel beside the sage fingers brushing the soft leaves. The scents calm you, thyme, rosemary, pennyroyal. Your mother taught you their names, not just for flavor, but for medicine, for protection, for ending pregnancies when a girl couldn't face a child. You aren't pregnant. Yet. But the thought follows you like a shadow, always half a step behind. Because you are married now, and your body is no longer yours alone. You've heard the whispered stories. Girls who carried too young. Girls who bled too long. Girls who didn't wake up. Childbirth is a gamble even for grown women. For someone your age, it's often a sentence. Your hips are not wide enough. Your bones haven't settled. And still, everyone around you waits for it to happen. They call it blessing. They say, soon you'll be a mother, as if it's a ribbon you'll be gifted rather than a cliff you may fall from. That night, you dream of water deep, cold, endless. You're swimming in a gown, the fabric dragging you down. Someone calls your name, but you can't lift your arms. You wake soaked in sweat, gasping. The fire in the hearth has burned low. The room is dark, and you are alone. You don't cry. Not anymore. The tears have dried into something sharper, something quieter. In the following days, you return to your routines. Shelling beans, reading bestiaries, writing letters you never send, and watching, always watching. You've started noticing things others miss. How the steward sighs before reading the ledgers. How the maid who tends the garden rubs her wrists when she thinks no one is looking. How the cook saves bits of sweetbread and tucks them into a pouch sewn into her apron. Small truths, hidden habits, survival methods. You begin to understand that in this world, marriage is not an end. It's a beginning of calculated endurance. Girls learn quickly to become wives, but wives, they learn to become quiet masters of their corners of the world. You ask the steward for more candles in the library. He says, "You like to read?" You nod. He frowns. Not common for a lady, but the next day the candles are there. Small victories, like the tight sleeves you hem yourself, like the way you speak slightly louder at dinner, like how you now sit straighter in the presence of visitors. You are becoming visible, not loud, not rebellious, but present. And in this world, where girls marry before they've named all their fears, that is something close to power. You're 14 now, maybe still 13 depending on which calendar your village counts by. It doesn't really matter, no one's asking how old you feel. They're watching your belly instead. They glance subtly when you walk by, ask if you're sleeping well. Slip questions into conversation like seeds into soil. Any signs, eating all right in the mornings? You've put on a bit, haven't you? As if your body is a garden they've planted and are waiting to bloom. You nod politely. Smile when you have to. But inside, your thoughts are louder than ever. You're not with child yet. And in the silence of your own mind, that feels like a reprieve. Like an extra breath held between two tidal waves. You know it won't last. No one expects it to. But for now, the waiting is enough. Your husband doesn't press. Not exactly. He asks once gently, "Do you think perhaps soon?" And you say, "Perhaps. That's all." There's a comfort in his restraint, even if it's more about politeness than understanding. He doesn't know the fear that creeps in when you feel a twinge of nausea, or when your courses are even a few days late. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. Girls who delivered babies too early and bled until their lips turned blue. Girls who died before they ever held their child. Girls buried beside infants, mother and babe, in the same cradle of earth. There's a grave at the edge of your family's old village marked with a twisted cross. Your mother once whispered she was 15. Her baby never cried. You think of that too often. Still, life goes on in the manor. You've grown into your routines now. You help with the accounts. You've learned which jars in the pantry to sniff before tasting. You keep track of how much barley was sold at the last market, and you gently correct the maid, who always forgets to skim the scum off the stew. You're becoming capable, useful, a presence rather than a guest. One evening, the steward calls you mistress without flinching. You feel a spark at that. Not joy, exactly, but recognition. The chapel becomes your quiet place again. You sit near the altar watching the flicker of candles and think about what marriage means when it starts this early. It isn't a bond of shared experience. It's not comfort. It's not laughter over morning bread. It's a contract, and one that began when you still had milk teeth. You've read enough now to know the church preached consent in theory. A girl should be old enough to agree. But consent in medieval times meant very little when your father signed the betrothal papers, when the priest said Amen, when the banns were read aloud, and the dowry changed hands. No one asked you. No one had to. Still, girls found ways to shape the lives they were handed. You think of Lady Eleanor from the manor 2 ridges away. Married at 13, widowed at 16, and now the mistress of her own land. She runs her estate with quiet authority, wears muted colors, and never once accepted a second match. People call her odd. You call her something else, free. You write to your sister again. A short letter. Just enough to say, it's been quiet. I read a book about plants. Did you know foxglove can stop a heart? You don't explain that you mean it literally, or that you wonder sometimes what power truly tastes like. Your letters are folded carefully hidden in a hollow space behind a loose stone in your chamber wall. You've gathered 6 now, none of them scent. They sit like pressed flowers, delicate, preserved, waiting. And there's a new habit you've picked up. You visit the village alone now. Not often and not without approval, but enough that the baker recognizes you and gives you the end pieces of the loaf without asking. You watch the girls, they're peasants mostly. Most are already betrothed. Some are married. A few wear swollen bellies like armor. They talk in half-laughs and tired voices, still clinging to girlhood, while rocking infants on their hips. One girl, Marjorie, can't be older than 12. Her face is round, her braid frayed. She looks at you like you are a window. Is it awful, she asks one day, her voice low. You pause. It's quiet, you say, and heavy. She nods as if that's enough. Maybe it is. That evening you sit with your husband by the fire. You sip ale and talk about the orchard. He tells you about a tree that needs felling, and you listen with care. When the fire crackles low, he says, "You've become steady." It's the closest thing to affection he's ever spoken. You nod. Steady. Not happy. Not cherished. But steady. And at 13 or 14, that feels like the safest thing you can be. It's midsummer now. The air hums with bees and the fields are thick with green. You watch the wheat rise like gold-tipped soldiers standing in formation. The manor is quieter during these long days. Most of the laborers are in the fields. The servants move slowly, wiping sweat from their brows with the hems of their aprons. You spend your mornings walking the edge of the orchards, your shoes dusted with pollen, your thoughts somewhere far away. You haven't bled in almost 2 moons. No one has said it aloud, but you know they've noticed. The steward's glances linger longer. The kitchen maid offered you a second bowl of broth yesterday unasked. And your husband, he watches you with a cautious hope, as if something fragile has finally gone right. You feel it too, something shifting inside you. Not just physically, but invisibly. The possibility, the inevitability. You are likely with child. You try not to panic. That would do no good. So instead, you do what you've been practicing for over a year, now you keep moving. Quietly. Carefully. You help with the ledgers, walk the grounds, read in the library. But in your mind, everything is different now. Every step you take feels heavier. Every future you imagined feels more distant. No one prepares a child to carry a child. There's no ceremony for the moment when a girl's life turns inside out. There's only waiting and guessing and praying that your body will not betray you in the same way your freedom once did. You find yourself returning to the herb garden again. You kneel among the plants and breathe in the scent of basil, marjoram, lavender. Pennyroyal too, though you dare not touch it now. You remember what your mother once said gently, as if sharing a dangerous secret. Some herbs end things. Some herbs begin them. You'll learn which is which when you're old enough. You never thought old enough would mean 13. The days stretch long and bright. You sleep more, and when you wake, your skin feels hotter than usual. You eat less, but crave salt. The signs are all there. Your body knows before your mind has caught up. And with that knowing comes a different kind of fear, not sharp and sudden, like it was on your wedding night, but slow and creeping, like cold water rising in a darkened room. One afternoon, the old cook Agnes, who's become something like a friend, pulls you aside. She doesn't ask questions. She just looks at you the way older women do when they've seen this unfold too many times before. She says, "You're young, but you're strong." You want to ask her if that's enough, but instead you just nod. She presses a small wooden charm into your palm, a worn carving of Saint Margaret, patron of childbirth. You close your fingers around it and try to feel safer. That night you dream of your mother. She's sitting on the edge of your old bed, brushing your hair with slow, practiced strokes. The window is open. You hear cows lowing in the distance. She says, "You'll be all right, my girl. You always were the clever one." You wake with tears already drying on your cheeks. Your husband still says little. He assumes, hopes, expects, but he does not ask how you feel. Not out of cruelty, perhaps, just ignorance. In this world, your silence is assumed to mean everything is well, and so you say nothing. But inside you, there's a storm. You think about the other girls, those who didn't survive, those who bore their children and never fully returned, those who went silent or stranger or softer in ways that made them unrecognizable even to themselves. You don't want to vanish. You write again to your sister. This time the letter is different. Not wistful or observational, but urgent. You write, "If I do not return home again, not in body but in self, I want you to remember me. I want someone to remember I used to run down hills and laugh too loud. That I once braided your hair in lopsided rows. That I was me before all this." You hide the letter behind the stone in the wall again. It joins the others, a growing archive of quiet truths no one else has heard. And still life continues. The manor prepares for harvest. Tools are sharpened, granaries cleaned. The air smells of sweat and anticipation. You walk the halls with your hand pressed just below your ribs, not because there's a bump yet, but because you need to feel something. To remind yourself this is real, that you are not imagining it. At dusk, you sit by the pond behind the orchard. Fireflies gather like stars fallen to earth. You think about the life forming inside you, small, faceless, wordless. A stranger. Will you survive this? No one knows. But you are still here. Still writing, still thinking, still quietly refusing to forget who you were before the title wife swallowed your name. And now perhaps you will become mother, not because you chose it, but because that was always the plan someone else wrote for your body. But even as you become what they expect, part of you is still you, still watching, still learning, still you. The first morning sickness hits you during prayers. You're kneeling on the cold chapel floor, lips moving through the litany, when the nausea curls up from your stomach and punches into your throat. You rise too fast, stumble past the pews, and barely make it to the courtyard before retching into the grass behind the rosemary hedge. The priest doesn't follow. No one does. No one needs to. Word will travel fast anyway. By evening, the steward is already making quiet arrangements. A midwife from the village. Fresh linens prepared. A stronger fire lit in your room, though it's still summer. You notice it all without comment. No one tells you directly what they're doing, but the world shifts slightly around you, as if everyone knows you've crossed into another kind of existence. And you feel it too. Not just in your body, though. The signs are everywhere now, fatigue that sits in your bones. Skin tender to the touch, hunger that arrives without warning and disappears just as quickly. But more than that, it's the sense of being watched differently. You are no longer just a young wife. You are a vessel now, a future, a hope, a gamble. You begin to walk more slowly, not out of pain but out of preservation. You avoid the stairs rest when you need to sip broths instead of chewing. Your husband offers a faint approving nod when you leave food unfinished. The maid smiles more. Agnes leaves lavender beneath your pillow. Everyone is suddenly gentler, as if your fragility has made you sacred. But underneath the attention lies something colder: expectation. Because girls in your position aren't just expected to carry life. They're expected to survive it, neatly, deliver it painlessly, and return to duty as if nothing happened. You know the truth is messier. You read it in the lines of Agnes's face. You hear it in the way the midwife's voice drops when she says, "We'll hope it's a small one." You learn more than you expected about your own anatomy. The midwife explains your hips, your pelvis, your chances. She's kind but blunt. You're young. That makes the bones soft. But soft doesn't always mean wide. She doesn't say it, but you feel the unspoken sentence you might not make it. That night you return to the library and open the bestiary again. This time you stop on the unicorn long white horn, gentle eyes always depicted beside a virgin. In the margin, someone has scrawled, "Only appears to those who are pure of heart." You stare at the illustration and wonder what kind of girl first drew it, and whether she grew up or whether she was grown too soon. You close the book and sit in the quiet. The library smells of old wood and wax. You press your hand against your belly, still flat, still silent, and whisper, "Be kind to me. Not to God, not to your husband, not to fate, to the thing inside you." The midwife visits every few days now. She gives you bitter teas and checks your pulse. She asks about your dreams. You lie sometimes. Tell her you dream of fields and birds. You don't tell her about the dream where you're buried alive beneath bundles of linen, unable to scream. The months drag. The bump appears. The house begins to change. A new cradle is brought into the chamber. The mattress is replaced with softer straw. One of the older maids teaches you how to swaddle with fabric strips. She does it with a bundle of sticks and says, "Hold them close enough and they forget to cry." You ask her what happens if they don't forget. She just shrugs. There's a lull before autumn. A few peaceful days where the air smells like drying leaves and the sun lingers a little longer. You sit by the window and sew a bonnet. Not because anyone told you to, but because your fingers need something to do. You're sewing for someone you haven't met, someone you haven't even seen on a midwife's chart. But already your thoughts drift to it, the tiny weight of a head in the crook of your arm, the smell of milk and sleep and skin. You don't know if it will be a boy or a girl. You don't know if you'll live to find out. But you sew anyway, because girls like you always do. You prepare even as the fear roots deeper, because no matter how young you are, they still call you mother before you've ever said the word aloud. And in this world, mother isn't a name you earn through experience. It's one they give you the moment your body dares to become more than your own. Labor begins with a whisper. Not a scream, not a gush, not a dramatic fall to the floor. Just a whisper inside your body, a soft, low ache in your back that blooms slowly and then fades. You almost dismiss it, almost convince yourself it's from the long walk to the orchard the day before. But deep down you know. You were taught to recognize this moment, though no one ever described it fully. They all spoke in circles. When your time comes, you'll know. Now you do. The knowledge sits inside your ribs like a bell waiting to be struck. You say nothing at first. You eat your breakfast slowly. Smile faintly when the steward asks how you're feeling. You spend the morning reading in the sunroom, a book propped on your belly like a tiny table. Only when the second wave of pain comes stronger now, tighter, unmistakable, do you excuse yourself and climb the stairs to your chamber. Then you tell the maid. Then the whole house knows. Everything moves faster than you're ready for. Midwife summoned. Boiling water fetched. Sheets changed. Your husband is ushered out of the room, his presence deemed unhelpful. You hear him pacing outside like a soldier awaiting a battle he has no part in. You almost laugh. They undress you gently, help you onto the birthing bed. The mattress is lumpy but thick, clean linens. You remember helping to fold them weeks ago. You wonder if that version of you quietly smoothing out corners could have imagined what they'd be used for. The midwife kneels beside you. She's older than you remembered. Worn hands, calm eyes. She places a palm on your forehead and says, "Breathe when I say, scream when you must." And so you do. The hours blur. Pain becomes your companion, familiar, insistent, all-consuming. You lose track of time, of people, of yourself. The room fades in and out like a flickering candle. Faces hover above you, maids, maybe Agnes, maybe a second midwife. One voice repeats your name. One hand holds yours too tightly. You drift and return, drift and return. You scream, you cry, you bleed. You do not die, not yet. At some point you feel the shift. The moment when agony peaks, when everything narrows to a single burning ring of pressure, and then finally release. The weight leaves you. The air changes. And then a cry. Not yours. Theirs. The baby is small, red, wrinkled, alive. Someone says a girl, and you nod, not really hearing. Your mind is 1,000 miles away, and also entirely here, floating somewhere between the shock of survival and the sharpness of what's just begun. They clean her, wrap her, place her in your arms. She is quiet now. Her eyes are closed, but her mouth moves slightly like she's searching for something she hasn't yet learned to name. You stare down at her and think, "You are the start of everything and the end of everything I was." No one tells you how to feel in this moment. There is no rush of joy, no cinematic swell of love, just awe, exhaustion, terror, and the strangest kind of peace, like standing at the edge of a cliff and not falling. You name her quietly, a name you picked in secret months ago during a walk among the apple trees. You whisper it again just to be sure it's real. Later they bring broth and clean sheets and your husband. He stands at the door and looks at you like you are made of glass. He says, "Well done, and she's beautiful, and you should rest." You nod. You do not know him. Not really. But he is here. And in this world, presence is its own kind of offering. You hold your daughter longer than anyone expected. Because for all the ways this child will demand from you milk time, years, parts of your soul, you already know what no one told you, that this little girl will also become your anchor, your reason, your resistance. Because now you are not just a girl who was married young. You are a girl who gave birth and lived. A girl who will now raise another girl, one who might live differently. And even if she can't, even if the world doesn't change, you will remember who you were. So that maybe she can remember too. The first days after birth feel like you've stepped outside time. Everything moves around you, servants bustling in and out, hushed voices behind doors, your husband receiving congratulations in the great hall, but you remain still anchored to the bed, your body raw and trembling from the passage it endured. You are stitched together with silence and sleep. And in the cradle beside you, your daughter breathes in shallow puffs, unaware that she has shifted the entire gravity of your world. You name her again in the quiet Ellen. It feels good in your mouth, soft but not weak. Ellen is small, but she's strong. Her grip startles you, fingers like tendrils closing around your pinky, as though she already knows not to let go. Her cries are high and urgent, and though they twist through your ribs like wire, they also pull you up from whatever numbness tries to settle in your bones. The midwife visits daily. She checks your stitches, your color, the flow of blood. She presses your belly and nods when it firms beneath her hand. "You'll heal," she says. "You're lucky." You don't feel lucky. You feel hollowed, but alive. That word matters now in a way it never did before. They keep you in your chamber for 2 weeks. It's tradition for healing, for modesty, for the sake of showing the household that the mistress has done what was expected. Visitors send honey and swaddling cloths. A priest comes to bless the child. Your husband visits awkward at first, then more relaxed, like a man relieved of a task gone right. He brings you warm wine and whispers, "She has your nose." You nod, though you don't see it. Ellen looks like herself, fierce and new and unknowable. Nights are hardest. She wakes often, mouth open like a bird's rooting blindly. Your breasts ache and crack and sometimes bleed, but she nurses until she falls into a milk-drunk sleep. You stare at her, then her lips glossy, her lashes fine as silk threads, and wonder how something tiny could fill so much space inside you. And you begin to understand what your mother once meant when she said, "A daughter is a mirror, but not always a kind one." You see her and you see yourself. You see what you were at her size, fragile, watched, prepared for roles too large. And you wonder deeply, painfully, if you'll be able to protect her from the same. Because girls like you, girls who marry before their voices settle, who carry before they've run through all their dreams, they remember. And now you wonder how to take that memory and shape it into something your daughter can live without. You begin to write again. This time not letters to your sister. These pages are for Ellen. You write when she sleeps. Not about your labor or your pain, but about your favorite part of the orchard, the best day you had before you married the smell of summer fields. You write about how you used to imagine unicorns in the woods and how you still do sometimes. You write your mother was once a girl with scraped knees and ink-stained fingers. I want you to know her too. You hide the pages beneath the loose stone in the wall. The letters for your sister remain there too, but now they feel different. They were survival. These new pages, they're a seed. Weeks pass. Your bleeding slows. The midwife stops visiting. You return to your duties gradually, walking the manor, checking the ledgers, nodding through supper conversations. Ellen is passed between arms during the day, maids, nurses. Even your husband once stiffly, like she might crumble in his hands. But at night, she is always yours. And in that silence, just the two of you, a promise forms that whatever the world says, girls must be wives, mothers, tokens, treaties, you will find a way to give her something more. You don't know what it looks like yet, but you'll try. Because you are not just a girl who was married young. You are a girl who learned to survive it, and now you're learning to shape it. Autumn arrives curling around the manor like a shawl. The air smells of damp earth and apples rotting sweetly in the orchard. Leaves flutter from the trees in slow spirals, and your daughter's first season change passes without her noticing. She sleeps mostly, eats, cries, sleeps again. But you feel it. The shift, the cooling, the hush that follows after something loud. Your body is healing, though not as fast as you wish. Some mornings you wake with a dull ache in your hips, and your hands tremble when you hold the quill too long. You're thinner than you were before. Your hair falls out more easily, and your thoughts sometimes wander into dark rooms with no windows. You don't always tell anyone when that happens. But Agnes knows. She brings you chamomile tea without asking, and rubs clove oil into your temples with the gentleness of someone who's been there. She doesn't speak much, just listens, breathes alongside you, and lets you rest your head on her shoulder when the world feels too sharp. It's a strange thing, this in-between. You are not pregnant anymore. You are not newlywed. You are something else now, something harder to name. A mother, yes. A wife still. But also a girl who's walked through fire and come out carrying someone else's life in her arms. People see you differently now. They treat you like a full woman, as if childbirth is some gate you've passed through and nothing before it matters anymore. They forget you're still only 14, maybe 15. The months blur. You don't correct them. There's a power in their forgetfulness after all. With each passing week, you take back more of your world. You begin giving instructions again, softly, but with more certainty. The cook consults you before ordering more grain. The steward accepts your corrections without a raised brow. You even speak at the table more often. Not about feelings, of course. Not about your dreams or fears. But about wool prices and bread supplies, and when the mason will finish the repairs to the well. Practical things. Safe things. And yet, sometimes when Ellen is sleeping, you find yourself by the window tracing the condensation with your fingertip and wondering what might have been. If you'd stayed a girl longer. If you'd waited. If the world had given you the choice. You begin writing again, not just the letters or the secret stories, but something else. You take scraps of parchment and record what you've learned: how to time contractions, what herbs ease swelling, which maids can be trusted, and which ones whisper. You're building a kind of manual, not for yourself, for someone like you. One day, maybe even your daughter, you hide the pages where no one will find them. Girls weren't supposed to keep records like that. Wisdom, after all, belonged to the old, to the men, to the monks. But your ink dries anyway, and the pages multiply. Your husband is kind, if distant. He touches Ellen's head sometimes as if unsure how to love something so small. He's never raised a hand to you, and in this world, that makes him a good man. But he doesn't ask about your thoughts, your fears. He doesn't ask what it felt like to split open and bleed for hours. He doesn't ask what it feels like now to be stitched back together unevenly, quietly in pieces. You don't resent him for it. Not really. You just stop waiting for him to understand. Instead, you gather your strength from the rhythm of your days, Ellen's breathing, the fire's crackle, the sound of your own heartbeat, while everyone else is asleep. You find your power in the small things, the things no one taught you to treasure. One night, Ellen wakes with a cry so sharp it startles you upright. She's burning with fever, her tiny body damp and trembling. Panic claws up your throat, but you remember Agnes's words. The herbs, the cold cloth, the prayer. You do it all. And the fever breaks by dawn. You sit there beside her skin, sticky with worry, and think, I did that. Not the priest, not your husband. You, the girl they married off too young, the one they barely looked at when they signed her life away. You. And it changes something inside you. Not pride, not arrogance, just solidity. A knowledge that you are not just surviving. You are shaping, guiding, becoming. Ellen sleeps again, peaceful and slack-jawed, her tiny hands curled into fists. You brush a curl from her cheek and whisper, I see you. I see me in you. Outside, the leaves are almost gone. Winter is coming. But for once, you are not afraid. Winter settles like a hush over everything. The manor becomes a world of shadows and firelight. You learn the language of creaking beams and frostbitten glass. Wind howls through the stones at night, and the hearth becomes your anchor, its glow stretching just far enough to hold back the dark. You swaddle Ellen tighter. You press her against your chest until you can feel her breath sync with yours. The cold seeps into bones and floorboards, but inside your chamber, warmth clings to the quiet rituals you've built. You're 16 now, or perhaps still 15. No one marks the day clearly anymore, not for girls like you. Time is measured in the changing size of your daughter's hands, the tightness of your old dresses, the seasons drifting past your window like ghosts. No one asks if you feel older. You just are. Your body no longer aches the way it used to, though there are days when you still feel tender. Not broken, not sick, just slightly translucent, like your skin never fully remembered how to be armor again. But your spirit that has hardened in a quiet, necessary way. You're no longer shocked when people speak over you. You just watch. And remember, the household has learned to come to you for things now, not everything but more than before. The cook wants your opinion on the year's grain. The steward defers to your judgment about what to send to the tenants as holiday gifts. Your husband listens mostly in silence but never contradicts. They're not afraid of you. Not yet. But they respect you. That's new. You've earned it not through force or title but through persistence. You were the girl who did not vanish after marriage. The one who did not wither after childbirth. You stayed. And slowly they learned not to look past you. Your letters to Ellen grow longer. You write them during her naps, your ink steady, your words sharper now. They are lessons disguised as stories. Tales of clever girls and foolish lords, of wolves who wore crowns and maidens who escaped not through love but through listening. Sometimes you imagine her finding these when she's older, reading them in secret, realizing her mother once held fire between her teeth and dared to speak softly. You also begin teaching Ellen names, the real ones, not just for things like spoon or milk, but the names of plants, of birds, of stars. You want her to know the world is big, bigger than this manor, bigger than marriage, bigger than the roles people carve for girls before they even speak. And you begin to dream again. Not the nightmares that followed the birth. Not the hollow dreams where you float faceless through corridors. But dreams that make your fingers twitch, that fill your lungs with longing. Of walking through cities you've never seen. Of hearing music you've never been taught. Of sitting in a room full of women, no men in sight, and laughing loud and unrestrained and free. You don't tell anyone, but you write it all down. Ellen starts walking in that first deep winter snow, unsteady arms outstretched, giggling as she flops into the white like a baby bird learning flight. Her cheeks flush red. Her curls catch snowflakes. You watch her from the window with something dangerously close to joy pressing against your chest. You go outside to join her. For the first time in a long while you run. Just a few steps. Enough to feel your legs again. Enough to remember the wind on your face. She chases you, falls, laughs. And when you lift her up, your arms don't feel weak. Your spine doesn't tremble. You are strong. Not the kind of strong the world demands of women, that silent, shrouded endurance, but the kind you've earned by building yourself back piece by piece when no one thought you would. That night by the fire, Ellen sleeps in your lap. The snow taps gently at the window pane. You look down at her face and whisper, "You will never be married off to a stranger," while you still dream about climbing trees. You don't know how you'll keep that promise, but you say it anyway. Because girls like you were never taught to dream. But you are teaching her, and that might be the bravest thing you've ever done. Spring arrives slowly, like a secret. At first, you only notice the shift in the light, the way it lingers longer at the edge of the day. Then the snow begins to recede, revealing muddy paths and soggy earth. Soon the buds return to the trees, tentative and shy, as if they're checking to see if the world is safe again. Ellen claps when she sees the first crocus bloom. She calls it a sunflower even though it's not, and you don't correct her. Instead, you crouch beside her, run your fingers across the tender green and whisper, "That's what new beginnings look like." She doesn't understand. But you do. There's a warmth returning not just to the land, but to you. In your skin, your thoughts, your very breath. You walk more often now, down to the village, around the orchard, even up the hill overlooking the estate where you haven't dared to go since before the marriage. The climb is steep, and your legs protest, but the view is worth it. From there, the world doesn't look so small. The manor is just a roof among trees. The village a scatter of rooftops. The river glints like silver thread beneath the hills. And for a moment, you let yourself imagine what lies beyond those hills. Towns you've never seen. Markets filled with spices you've never tasted. Roads that lead away instead of circling back. You don't want to run away. Not exactly. But you want to remember that you could. There's a difference, Your marriage still exists, of course. Your husband still shares your table, your days. But something in the air between you has cooled. Not in anger, just in awareness. You've both changed. He sees you as capable now, not just young. You see him as less mysterious, more ordinary. And that ordinariness is a strange comfort. He does not ask about your writings. He does not open the drawer where the letters to Ellen now live. He doesn't stop you, and that is enough for now. You've started meeting with the village midwife more often, not for your health, but to help her. You bring herbs from the manor garden, clean linen's broth when she's too tired to cook. You watch her deliver a baby one night, quiet and efficient. And afterward, when the mother sleeps, she turns to you and says, "You could do this, if you wanted." You don't answer. But her words follow you home. You think about it the next day as you watch Ellen help the cook knead bread. Her hands covered in flour, her mouth full of giggles. You think, what if I could be more than just the mother who once bled into sheets and lived to whisper bedtime stories? What if you could become a woman who helps other girls survive because deep down you know the truth, not every girl survives what you did. Some vanish into the silence of their marriages. Some disappear during childbirth. Some grow hard, bitter, forgetful of who they once were. But you didn't vanish. You wrote your way through. You remembered. And that remembering, that's power. So you begin to ask questions. You ask Agnes about birthing customs. You ask the village women about their daughters. You visit the chapel and trace the names on old baptism records, searching for patterns, for stories buried in ink. And slowly, you begin to build something larger than your own memory. A record. A secret one. Not just of dates and names, but of experiences. Of what girls feel before they're told they're ready. Of what wives whisper in the dark. Of which herbs calm pain and which ones keep it from returning. And you wonder if these pages ever reach Ellen one day. Will she understand? Will she see that her mother once held the weight of generations and refused to be crushed? You tuck another page into the drawer, and that night, as you lay beside your daughter, her breath slow and steady, her body curled toward yours, you whisper the same promise again. I will not let the world take you too soon. She stirs but doesn't wake, and you smile in the dark, because even if she forgets the words, maybe, just maybe, she will feel them in the way she moves, the way she chooses, the way she lives. Summer returns with the scent of rain and lavender. The garden bursts into color, and Ellen runs barefoot through it, laughing with a crown of daisies tangled in her curls. You watch her from the stone bench, stitching quietly beneath the awning, letting the warmth settle into your shoulders. She is taller now, her words clearer, her questions more curious, and you can feel it, time speeding up. She is still small, yes, but less so than before. No longer a bundle of need, she has opinions now. Favorites. A stubbornness that mirrors your own. You see yourself in the set of her jaw, when she refuses to eat turnips, in the way she lines her toys into neat rows as if order might protect her from chaos. You never taught her that. But maybe you did without words. The household runs smoothly. More often than not, people come to you instead of your husband. They ask for your input, your judgment, your plans. You manage it all gracefully, decisively, like a woman who has been mistress of her life longer than she has. But still, no one quite calls you that. You are still young, still the girl who married too early. And yet, not just that. You're learning now that power doesn't always arrive with a crown or a ceremony. Sometimes it settles into you quietly, like water soaking into dry earth, invisible but vital, and unshakable once it's there. One afternoon, you overhear two visiting noblewomen speaking in the garden. They don't realize you're near. One says, "Such a shame she married so young, but she's done well considering." The other hums in agreement, then adds, "Yes, she's calm." That's rare in girls with stories like hers. You don't interrupt. You just smile to yourself. Because they think your calm is the whole story. They don't see the letters. The hidden journal now nearly full. The quiet meetings with the midwife. The books you've been collecting, borrowed from old priests, purchased in secret, read in candlelight, after everyone is asleep. Books on herbs. Books on childbirth. Books on law, and one on astronomy because it reminded you of the sky you watched as a child before your world shrank to hearth and cradle. Your husband notices, of course, but he says nothing. You've reached a quiet understanding. You will perform the role of wife when necessary, appear beside him at meals, smile when guests visit. But the inner world, the world of thought, of fire, of freedom, is yours alone. Sometimes, late at night, you hold Ellen against your chest and whisper fragments of those books into her hair. She doesn't understand, but she listens. And maybe when she's older, those fragments will echo back. You wonder what kind of girl she'll be, what kind of woman. Will she want marriage? Will she refuse it? Will she burn with questions like you did? Or float gently through life content to tend gardens and bake bread, and never ask why the world bends the way it does? You hope she chooses. That's all. You hope she chooses. Because choice was what you never had. Not really. Not when they told you you were of age. Not when they handed you a gown and told you to smile. Not when they congratulated your womb before they congratulated your heart. So now every lesson you pass on is rooted in one secret aim: to build her a world where choice isn't a luxury, it's a birthright. You press flowers into the pages of your journal, not for decoration, for memory, for proof that something bloomed while you were growing older and wiser in the shadows. And one night, as you tuck Ellen into bed, she asks you, "Mama, were you happy when you were a girl?" You pause, not because you don't know the answer, but because you do. And so you kneel beside her bed, brush her curls from her forehead, and say, "Sometimes. But I didn't know what happiness could really be. Not until you came along." It's the truth, and the closest thing to peace you've felt in years. Outside, the fireflies blink against the window pane. Inside, you breathe deeply, and you let yourself believe for just a moment that things can be different for the girls who come next. The sky ripens into autumn again, your third since Ellen was born. You've stopped marking your age with candles or feast days. Now you measure in seasons, in growth, in the slow softening of grief into purpose. You're not the same girl they once dressed in silk and handed over like a parcel. That girl lives in your bones, still quiet and observant, but you've grown around her like a tree around a nail. You've become yourself. Ellen runs to you now, sturdy and sure-footed, her words tumbling over one another like brook water. "Mama, look," she says, holding up a worm she found in the garden. It was hiding under the rock. You smile, brush dirt from her cheek, and nod. "Sometimes the best things are," you say, and she giggles without understanding. But one day she will. She's nearly 4 now, and already you feel the world beginning to pull at her edges. Whispers from the kitchen maids about future manners, idle talk of betrothals from passing guests who think nothing of speaking about a child's fate within earshot. It makes your blood sing in that old, quiet way, the way it did the night you birthed her, the night you promised she'd know something better. You begin to say no more often. No to the gifts from strange men, just tokens, they say. No to the veiled suggestions about early schooling to prepare her. No to the notion that she must always curtsy first. You are no longer interested in preparing her for someone else's world. You are teaching her to build her own. And that work begins with stories. Every night before sleep, you tell her one. Not always about princesses. In fact, rarely about princesses. Your heroines are girls with blistered hands and sharp eyes. They ride horses, climb towers, sew maps into cloaks, slip poison into goblets when needed. Your stories don't always end with weddings. Sometimes they end with freedom. Ellen asks for those stories again and again. "Mama, tell me the one about the girl who ran away to the convent and became a scholar. Mama, what happened to the girl who wouldn't marry the old king?" You tell them all. Every night. And in doing so, you begin to rewrite your own. The letters you've hidden away in the drawer now fill 3 small books. You've stitched leather covers for them, marked them with moons and symbols only you understand. One day they will be Ellen's, or someone else's. Another girl who needs to know she's not alone. The midwife has started calling you sister. She invites you to more births asks for your opinion, tells others you have a gift. You haven't said it aloud yet, but you know what you're becoming. A guide. Not because you were taught, but because you remembered. There are whispers now, even among the noble families. Whispers that you're unusual, that you've read too much, that you're clever in dangerous ways. You let them whisper, let them wonder. You've learned that power doesn't always need a sword. Sometimes it just needs a girl with memory and patience. Ellen falls asleep one night with her arms around your neck. Her breath is warm, her fingers tangled in your braid. And as you lie there, eyes open in the dark, you think of all the girls who came before. The ones who didn't get to write their stories. The ones who didn't get a second breath after childbirth. The ones who bled into wedding sheets and were told it was an honor. You carry them inside you still, and through you, so does Ellen. Your husband still sits beside you at meals, still watches you with quiet eyes, maybe wondering when exactly you became someone he no longer fully understands. But he does not stop you. He doesn't dare. Because you've survived what he never could. You've survived girlhood, marriage, motherhood, and you've made meaning out of all three. Outside, the leaves begin to fall again. The cycle begins anew. But this time you are not merely watching. You are planting. You are preparing. You are building something. Not just for Ellen, but for every girl who's ever asked in the quiet of her soul, will I be allowed to choose? And you answer with every story, every stitched page, every whispered promise, yes. Because you lived to say it, and she will live to believe it. The fire has burned low now, casting long shadows on the floor, as the embers pulse gently like a sleeping heartbeat. You've wandered through so many seasons tonight, through the chill of duty, the warmth of unexpected love, the ache of remembrance, and the quiet bloom of resistance. It's been a long journey, not just across time, but into the private corners of a girl's heart, who became a woman too soon, and still managed to find her way through. You've heard her story not told in declarations or sweeping drama, but in the still moments, in whispered vows, in the silent turning of pages written for a daughter who might one day read them and see the strength it took to hold on to herself. Maybe that's the quiet truth of history. It's not always carved in stone or sung by bards. Sometimes it's hidden in drawers, etched into the folds of a worn dress, remembered in the pause before a story is told, and passed from mother to daughter in the space between breath and bedtime. Now, as the night presses close and your eyes grow heavy, let yourself drift. Imagine the soft rustle of parchment beneath your fingers, the distant hush of wind in the trees, the sound of a child's laughter echoing down a garden pesach, and somewhere far off, but real, the steady heartbeat of a woman who once was a girl, still writing, still remembering, still whispering or allowed to choose. Let the rhythm of that truth rock you gently now. You've done enough for today. You are safe here, and the world can wait until morning.